It was supposed to be a place of solace, a sanctuary where souls come to seek forgiveness and peace. But that day, in the dimly lit corner of the church, I found only guilt. Not the kind of guilt that comes from breaking a commandment or committing a sin in the traditional sense. No, this was the kind of guilt that creeps into your soul and eats at you from the inside out. A guilt born of temptation, of desires buried deep but no longer easy to ignore. I, Luke, never thought I would cross that line. But I did. And I did it there, in the very church where I had been raised to believe that purity was above all. The place where all things were supposed to be sanctified. But instead, I found myself entangled in something that felt sacred and sinful all at once. And there was no turning back. My name is Luke, a 28-year-old man, a son of this small town nestled somewhere in the heart of the U.S. I'd grown up around religion, my mother's voice in my ear, reminding me that the church was the one place where your sins could be washed clean. But I never took it too seriously. Faith, for me, was a tradition more than a belief. I would go, listen to the sermons, sing along to the hymns, and then I'd walk out the door, ready to face the world again. But recently, something had shifted. I was drawn to the church in a way I hadn't been before. There was a quiet pull in my heart, urging me to seek something deeper. It started with the volunteering. I'd been helping out with the weekly services, thinking it would be good for me, some kind of penance, I suppose. But when I first met Sister Margaret, I had no idea that my life would change forever. The church, which had always been a safe haven, became the setting for something that felt like a forbidden dream, a dream that quickly spiraled out of control. The church was an imposing structure. Gray stone walls reached toward the sky like fingers outstretched to touch the heavens. The spire, tall and elegant, was visible from miles away. Inside, the air always smelled faintly of incense and aged wood, the kind of scent that clung to you like a memory. The stained glass windows painted the pews with vibrant hues, casting the room in a soft, warm glow. Everything about it was peaceful, solemn, and ancient, as though the walls held centuries of whispered prayers and secrets. For the most part, the church was quiet. The only sounds were the rustling of hymnal pages or the murmur of the priest's voice during service. But that silence, the one I had always found comforting, now felt charged with something else. Something unspoken. Sister Margaret, one of the nuns who worked there, had a way of making everything feel both serene and tense. Her presence was calm, almost ethereal, but there was something else beneath the surface, something that made it hard to look her in the eye for too long. I noticed it the first time I saw her, though I couldn't put my finger on it. She moved with a grace that felt both innocent and knowing, as if she carried a burden too heavy for her to bear. It was a chilly morning when I first met Sister Margaret. She was in the back room of the church, preparing the altar for the upcoming Mass. She wore a simple black habit, her hair tucked neatly under a veil. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught my attention. It was her eyes. They were soft, but piercing, the kind of eyes that seemed to see right through you, peeling back layers you didn't even know you had. I'd been helping set up the candles on the altar when she spoke to me for the first time. "Luke," she said, her voice smooth like velvet. "You're doing well. Not everyone can handle the work that comes with serving the Lord's house." I didn't know how to respond. I had never really considered myself holy, just someone who was trying to do right by his mother's wishes. But there was something in the way she spoke to me, as if she had read something in me that I hadn't even known was there. "Thank you, Sister Margaret," I mumbled, looking down at the candles in my hands. She smiled, a small, gentle smile that seemed to hold more weight than it let on. It was then I noticed how close we were standing. She was just a few inches away, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. It made my heart race, though I couldn't understand why. Was it just the closeness? Or was it something more? She didn't seem to notice my discomfort, or if she did, she didn't comment on it. Instead, she gestured to the candles, asking me to place them on the altar. I did as she asked, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between us. Over the next few weeks, I found myself returning to the church more and more. At first, it was because I felt like I should, like this was what I was supposed to do. But with each visit, the attraction to Sister Margaret grew stronger. There was something magnetic about her, something that kept pulling me in. She spoke to me like she understood the struggles I faced, even though she had taken vows to a life far removed from anything I could comprehend. There were moments when I caught her glancing at me, her gaze lingering just a little too long, her eyes filled with something unspoken. It made my pulse quicken. And then there were the times when our hands brushed against each other as we worked side by side, and I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through my veins. One evening, after the service had ended, she stayed behind to finish cleaning up. I was about to leave, but something made me hesitate. I walked back toward the altar, where she was arranging the candles. She turned, surprised to see me standing there. "Luke," she said softly, her voice almost like a whisper. "Is there something you need?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't need anything. But in that moment, I wanted to say so much more. I wanted to tell her that I had never felt this way before. That something in me was waking up, something I had never allowed myself to acknowledge. But instead, I just shook my head. "No, sister. I just wanted to, thank you. For everything." Her smile was warm, but there was a sadness behind it, as if she knew what was happening between us but couldn't bring herself to acknowledge it. I could see it in her eyes. She was fighting something too. And I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything started to change. Days passed, and I couldn't get Sister Margaret out of my mind. Each time I saw her, I felt the connection between us grow stronger. She was kind, patient, and compassionate, but there was something else there, a hidden fire that seemed to ignite whenever we were together. It was the kind of fire that should never have been allowed to burn in a place like the church, yet there it was, smoldering between us. And one evening, as the last light of day filtered through the stained glass windows, it happened. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even a conscious decision. It just happened. I couldn't escape the guilt. It was like a heavy cloak that draped over my shoulders, pulling me down with every step I took. Every morning, I woke up with the weight of what I had done hanging over me. The church, which had once been a place of peace and sanctuary, now felt like a prison. And the thing was, I didn't know how to feel about what had happened. The desire had been real, undeniable, but now that it had been acted upon, I was left with an overwhelming sense of shame. I couldn't look at Sister Margaret without feeling that same weight pressed down on me. The day after it happened, I didn't go to the church. I stayed in my apartment, pacing, restless, as I tried to make sense of everything. I had crossed a line that wasn't meant to be crossed. She was a nun, a woman dedicated to God, and I was just a man, lost in a whirlwind of emotions I didn't understand. What had started as a fleeting attraction had turned into something far deeper, something I wasn't prepared for. Yet, despite the overwhelming guilt, there was something else, a part of me that didn't regret it. The intimacy, the connection, the closeness we shared, it felt right. At the time, it felt like we were meant to be in that moment, in that space. And that thought haunted me. Sister Margaret didn't speak to me the day after the incident. In fact, she didn't say anything for the next few days. I could see her in the church, going about her duties with the same grace and poise she always had, but there was something different in the way she carried herself. It was like a wall had come up between us, a barrier that neither of us knew how to break down. I caught glimpses of her during my shifts at the church, but every time our eyes met, she quickly looked away. It stung, more than I care to admit. I wanted to approach her, to apologize, to tell her that I didn't mean for it to happen the way it did. But I knew better. There were no words that could fix what had transpired. One afternoon, after the last Mass of the day, I found myself standing alone in the back of the church, staring at the altar. The silence was deafening, and I could feel the weight of the building's history pressing down on me. This was a place meant for repentance, for healing, yet here I was, standing in the very spot where I had defiled it all. And then I heard her voice. "Luke," Sister Margaret said softly, breaking the silence. I turned, my heart racing. She was standing in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression unreadable. Her veil was slightly askew, and her eyes, those eyes, were filled with something I couldn't quite understand. Was it sadness? Regret? Or was it something else? "You've been avoiding me," she said, her voice low, almost pained. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I said, my words tumbling out before I could stop them. "It wasn't planned. I don't know what came over me." Sister Margaret sighed, a long, drawn-out breath, as if she were carrying the weight of something far greater than the two of us. "Neither of us did. But we can't change what has happened, Luke. It's done now." Her words stung. They were like a cold slap to my face. I had wanted to talk about it, to understand what this was, what we were, but it seemed like she had already moved on. "Does this mean it was a mistake?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, her eyes fixed on the ground, as if searching for the right words. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. "Perhaps it was," she said softly, her words hanging in the air like a prayer. "But sometimes, Luke, we don't know what we truly need until we have it. And then we realize, it's too late." The days following our conversation were a blur. I came to the church less frequently, unable to face Sister Margaret without feeling the weight of my own shame. The church, once a place where I could find solace, now felt like a prison. I couldn't escape the thoughts that haunted me, thoughts of her, of what we had done, and of the consequences that were sure to come. And then, a week later, it happened. I was working at the church when I noticed the priest, Father William, speaking quietly to Sister Margaret in the corner. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw the tension in their body language. Father William was an older man, strict and devout, and I could tell that whatever they were discussing was not good. Sister Margaret's face was pale, her eyes downcast, and I could see the deep lines of worry etched on her face. She looked like a woman who had lost everything. The next day, I was called into Father William's office. I knew exactly why. "Luke," he said, his voice calm but firm, "Sister Margaret has been very distressed these past few days. She's been struggling with something that she feels she cannot reconcile with her vows." I swallowed hard. I didn't mean for this to happen. "I swear, Father, it was never supposed to be more than." Father William held up his hand, silencing me. "I know what you mean. But there are consequences to actions like these, Luke. You must understand that. This is not just about your personal feelings. This is about Sister Margaret's life, her calling." He paused, his eyes hardening. "I've spoken with her, and she has decided to leave the convent." My heart dropped. Sister Margaret was leaving? I couldn't comprehend it. This woman, who had become a beacon of kindness in my life, was walking away from everything she had worked for, all because of one moment of weakness, one moment that I had been a part of. "I didn't want this," I said, my voice shaking. "I never wanted her to leave." Father William stared at me for a long time, his gaze stern. "Sometimes, Luke, we don't get to control the consequences of our actions. And sometimes, the consequences are more than we can bear." In the days that followed, I tried to come to terms with what had happened. The guilt was unbearable, and it consumed me. I had destroyed something beautiful, something pure, and I couldn't undo it. I couldn't fix it. Sister Margaret was gone, and I was left alone to pick up the pieces of my shattered conscience. I spent many nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would have happened if I had never gone to the church, if I had never met her. Would things have turned out differently? Would she still be there, her warm smile lighting up the room? But I knew one thing for certain. The church had changed for me. It was no longer a place of refuge. It was a place where I had lost my innocence, where I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And now, I was left with the weight of that mistake, the knowledge that I had caused someone else to lose everything they had worked for. Sister Margaret had paid the price for our moment of passion, and I was the one who had to live with the consequences. Thank you for listening to my story. Your support to like, comment, most importantly sharing to friends and family will encourage and give me the strength to continue sharing my experiences, no matter how difficult.